Welcome to the Thriving Leaders podcast, where we dive into real conversations that help leaders grow, teams flourish, and organisations thrive. I'm your host, Claire Gray, Leadership and Team Facilitator at Thriving Culture. I'm also the author of Thriving Leaders, Learn the Skills to Lead Confidently. This podcast is filled with practical tools, tips, actions, and insights that you can immediately apply so you can lead confidently now. In Season 2 of the Thriving Leaders podcast, I'm interviewing thought leaders from around the world to pick their brains on what it takes to build a thriving team. This is helping me write my second book, Thriving Teams, which will be out later in the year in 2025. I hope you enjoy the podcast. What does it take to lead an Olympic level team? Not on the field, but behind the scenes. In today's episode of the Thriving Leaders podcast, we're joined by Matt Carroll, the former CEO of the Australian Olympic Committee. With a career spanning elite sport administration and a legacy that includes navigating the Tokyo Games during a global pandemic, Paris Olympics, as well as the Winter Games, Matt offers rare insights in what it takes to build high-performing teams in the most demanding of environments. We explore leadership principles that fueled Olympic success, from creating clarity of purpose and embedding trust to the delicate balance of strategic planning across 4-year cycles. Whether you're leading in sports, business, or community, Matt's reflections offer powerful lessons on resilience, alignment, and legacy. Welcome everyone to today's Thriving Leaders podcast. Today I'm speaking with Matthew Carroll, who's the former CEO of the Australian Olympics Committee. So the Australian Olympic Committee is obviously involved in our highest accolades of sporting achievements. So really looking forward to talking to Matt today about what it takes to build a thriving team. Welcome, Matt.
My pleasure.
Awesome. You've recently moved on from the role of CEO at the Australian Olympics Committee, but tell me a bit about what the AOC does, what your role was, a bit about the executive team and the organisation as a whole.
Well, the AOC, obviously a National Olympic Committee, so it's responsible to the International Olympic Committee. We're not a member. We, as I used to say, we're a branch office. So we're responsible to the National Olympic Committee under the Olympic Charter of actually performing a number of things. One is obviously taking Australian Olympic teams to games, both the Summer Games and the Winter Games, and there's also a couple of youth games, so youth winter and youth summer as well. So that's a responsibility that we must do for obvious reasons. And then under the Charter, we're also responsible for the promotion of sport in Australia, particularly sport and education, wellbeing, for the quality of the community, all those sorts of things as well. The study of sport and, importantly, the integrity of sport. And therefore, part of that role is protecting athletes and ensuring that, particularly around anti-doping and things of that nature. So sort of a range of roles and responsibilities which we undertake. And we do it all across, we tend to measure things in 4 years.
Yeah. In your time and tenure at the AOC, how many games were you a part of?
Well, I was part of 2 winters, the Pyeongchang Games in Korea and the Beijing Games in China. And I was part of 2 summer games, recently last year, the Paris Games, but also Tokyo Games, which was exceptionally different. Did I get to the Tokyo Games? No, because we had to conduct Tokyo a little bit differently because of the pandemic. But certainly I was on board for those. Plus, as I said, the youth games and some Pacific Games as well. So that required, and that's why I'm saying all the things we do, a team of senior executives and a management team and the staff. We're not a huge organisation, 40, 50 people. We grow a bit in the summer games by taking on and so forth. But we have a very large footprint, as I like to say. So not a huge organisation, but a very large footprint across the country.
Yeah. And approximately how big do you grow to when a games is on?
Oh, we get well over 100. A bit the summer games. The winter games is not as large. We do that by taking on volunteers and also contractors. So people coming for specialist roles, such as security and things of that nature. And also ensuring we've got media officers for each of the sports who are participating or competing at the Olympic Games. So, and also medical services, all the things that go into a team, that's where we expand.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I think about the AOC, You think about the games and especially the summer games, but the winter games are also important. But it was interesting because my son recently came home from school really excited because he'd had one of the Australian Olympians from the water polo team come out to his school and he had an autographed postcard from him. And when I was facilitating a session with people at the AOC not long ago, I shared that and they were like, oh, that's great because that's the stuff that we do. We actually do try and promote sports in schools and education as well around that. So I think that's probably something that people don't realise that AOC looked after too.
Yeah, look, that's our Olympics Unleashed program, which we created years ago. They didn't, when I first started in 2017, we didn't have too many really good community engagements and we weren't fulfilling our charter under the IOC. So we did a bit of research and not unsurprisingly, but you never know until you check, that the importance of the Australian Olympic team and Olympians having the Australian community. And so we decided to design this program where Olympians would go into the classroom. And one of the things, because exactly as your son has said to you, is that putting the Olympian in the flesh, so to speak, in front of a classroom, it doesn't matter whether they're primary schools or secondary schools, means a lot to the students. What the messages are is about resilience. It's about being your best self. And most importantly, too, it's okay to fail. You pick yourself up and go on again, because there's only a few Olympians that come home with gold medals, and the rest of them strive and strive and strive, do their very best. Don't necessarily get a gold medal, but still achieve. So that's the sort of message that we put out there. And also that fits in with the promotion of sport, and not just the big commercial codes you see on TV, but obviously there's a sport for everyone, whether it be swimming, or whether it would be football, or whether it's table tennis, or in the winter sports, curling.
Yeah. I've done curling once before. It's quite an unusual sport, but quite fun as well.
Yeah. Lawn bowls on ice, as some people say, but yeah.
Yeah. And I love the resilience message, but also painting that picture about having a growth mindset and it's about effort. I think that's really important. So when we think about the Olympics, we obviously think about high performance because I guess that's what the athletes are there to achieve. But when we think about high performance in terms of a thriving team, what sort of data supports the fact that the AOC is a high performing team, especially through some of the games that you delivered?
There's a role with the quads, and what I've been doing at the beginning of each quad, we'd set what we called our initiatives, and about 10 initiatives. And they were things which the senior management team and different ones would lead different initiatives. And that would include the preparation and delivery of the Olympic team. And you're quite right. It is a high performance team, as I've been quoted saying, we're not there for the picnic. It's not a weekend rouseabout. It's that these athletes will be giving their best. So we have to ensure the way we look after them and ensure how they get there and have the best opportunity for success. So that's the importance there. So we set initiatives around the team. We set initiatives around the community engagement, the things I talked about before. Our Olympian services is how we look after Olympians when they're finished competing, while they're still competing, but particularly when they're finished competing, the engagement there. Our role in looking after our member sports. The AOC is a member-based organisation. The members of the AOC are the 46 Olympic sports. So from your tennis, your big commercial sports like your Tennis Australias down to your table tennises as well. So they're all our members and they're all treated equally. So it's initiatives to support their growth and participation, their engagement with government around funding. So that those 10 initiatives, let's say right across the range of the things that we do, are set by the senior management team in conjunction with me. We take them to our board and we put obviously measures against those so that we can measure them over the course of the 4 years, but as we lead into the games and obviously at the very end, and see that we've achieved what we set out to do and obviously roll the process on. It's not as if you're going to change everything every 4 years, but the different games, depending where sport is, sports are changing. There's a changing dynamic as an industry. When I first started, data was starting to come in as a very critical thing. Now data and the management of data in terms of the support of our member sports, whether it be fan data or information data, is obviously now critical in the world of sport, particularly around growing participation and, importantly, because you've got to pay the bills, we've got the commercial aspect as well. And fan data and engagement fans is critical now to securing sponsorship. And so there are our measures, and we set those as what we have to achieve. Our initiatives, we have measures, and as we have to achieve over the 4-year quad. Well, in the case of Tokyo, it's got a bit messy, a bit longer.
I'd love to understand it a bit more. So when you say quads, is that you're working in quarters, or what do you mean by quads?
Sorry, 4 years.
Oh, it's 4 years. Okay, the 4-year cycle that you're working towards. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It was the easiest way when I got there. I used to say the mystery of the five rings because it was a very different world. I came out of rugby, football, and soccer. And yeah, you run an annual season and things of that nature. The Olympic world runs around these 4-year summer quads. And I soon worked out that's the best way to run the business. It affects your revenue because you've got to peak your revenue to ensure you can pay. Your expenditure really peaks in the summer period. So you've got to manage that aspect as well and therefore gear the things that we do to that 4-year period. But mind you started on your next 4-year period before you finish it. So we'd started on the LA games and the Milan Cortina games, which are the next winners, before the Paris games were over. Had started, sorry. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think with any organisation I work with from a strategy perspective, making sure the strategy fits the cycle for your organisation. So I actually like the quads because it's something that you've got this North Star that people are working towards. And although it'll be rolling with future games that are coming too, it gives people something to work towards. And you've got those initiatives that are going to help you achieve success and being really clear about what those measures of success are. Because I think that's something that often we can get caught up in. What I'm finding more is a lot of teams, especially last year, were doing 2030 strategies but it was hard for them to actually think about where they're going to be in 5-6 years time because the world's changing so rapidly as well. But so maybe even bringing things back to 3-year cycles or whatever works for your organisation, or maybe it's a 12-month cycle, depending on the type of organisation that you have.
You're right. I think it's where the branch office, the IOC. So I worked out again, yes, strategic plans and the strategic, what's the aspects of everything you do. But because our charter is set by the IOC, I thought, okay, that's locked in. We have our objectives, which are in the Constitution, which were approved by the members, and they're broad, but they are broad but specific, e.g., take a team to the games. That's very specific. But promotion of sport and the importance of sport and education, things like that. So they're within the objectives. So you take out the charter, take our objectives, put the two together, and we can't go off and run a different business. Don't start competitions or we can't set up a new football competition or things of that nature. That's not our business. Our business is actually set down by the IOC. So our strategies really come back to how are we going to deliver our objectives. Let's know what we've got to do. Who's going to do it, and how are we going to do it?
Yeah. And thinking about the objectives that come down from the Olympic Charter and the IOC, and because what I find to make it relatable for others is sometimes we can create strategic objectives and they're so broad that you can fit anything into them, like anything that you're doing. But we want to make sure people are focusing on the right things and contributing towards what matters. How did you go about setting those 10 highest priority initiatives for you for that 4-year period? Because I'm sure there's lots of things that could be in those top 10 priorities. What's the process that the exec team goes by to work out what's most important?
Or we spent a couple of days, as you often do, get out away from the office, and look at what happened in the previous quad, how we performed, where do we want it. The Tokyo quad had its issues for obvious reasons, but around the team, but the rest was pretty stable. So how do we go there? How can we build on that? Because what we do doesn't change. So all what we do is we need to build on those things. And how can we do it better, more effective? Then you get into how we're going to grow revenue, sticking with that. How are we going to make sure we deliver for our members' sports and therefore the athletes so they have the best opportunity for a successful Olympic team? We don't coach or train, or they're not our athletes. We borrow them from our members' sports every 4 years. But what we have to do is provide the platform, the systems, the support services to the team so they can achieve success. How can we improve on that? How can we, as you were saying before, how can we improve on the high performance environment? How can we maximize the high performance environment? So a good example of that in terms of strategy, it sort of half went down well with some of our athletes, but anyway, because of Tokyo, the IOC and the Japanese government said that every athlete had to leave within 48 hours of completion of their sport. And then brought them back and quarantine, all that sort of stuff. And that was for health protection and all those good things. The data that came back from that particular games was that the other illnesses and things of that nature were way down, almost zero. Any gastric or people feeling bad. And therefore the ability for those athletes who had still had to compete in the second week, they got appropriate attention, appropriate support. We had a fitter, stronger set of athletes in the second week than we normally do, because people do like to party.
Yeah.
We do go out.
They like to celebrate. They've just won a medal. Yeah.
We brought in a new rule, RSC, based on the data. In a high performance environment, the best thing is when you finish your competition, you have to leave the village 48 hours after you've completed your competition for the benefit of your fellow athletes who are coming along to compete in the second week or in a few days' time. Because it worked. I mean, there was a bit of resistance, but then once the athletes actually thought their way through and the swimmers spoke to the runners and jumpers, and the runners and jumpers were really happy, and the swimmers were, oh, okay, we get that. So there was a bit of occasional difficulty, but we got something new. But again, that's building on the experience of the Tokyo Games, the data. No one could knock the medical data that showed that it was better for the athletes to compete. So that's in that high performance environment, setting the standard. We must have the best high performance environment. And we backed it up with data.
I love that data-driven approach. And I think the reality is when we introduce any change, it's always met with some resistance until people can see the benefit as well. So let's just paint a bit of a picture about the Tokyo Games, because it was a pretty unique games. I believe it was the first Olympic Games that we actually sent more females than males, but I guess it was during COVID. There was no audience for the athletes to spur them on. As you've said, there was quarantine. Like, paint us a picture of what was different to that games in terms of what you had to manage at the AOC.
Well, I guess, you started with an environment where people were anti the games going ahead. A lot of media were anti the games going ahead, or they weren't going to happen.
What's that underneath that? Like, why were they so anti? Because they didn't feel like they'd be able to.
More skeptical that the games would go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
And I've said this publicly before, the only country on earth who could have pulled off a games during the middle of a pandemic was Japan. I'm sorry, I don't think Australia would have done it. They would have put up the flag and called it off. But the Japanese and the IOC backed them, and the government backed them, and the games proceeded. So the challenge was then to get just over 1,000 Australians, the athletes and officials, and on planes to the games for them to perform at the highest standard, and then bring them back again and run them through a quarantine system, which was, as we all know, varied from state to state and was challenging to the point where even one had to have very difficult, pointed conversations with state governments about quarantine. And of course, the other one, which is hard to get, was to get vaccination. And then we said, look, we'll pay for the vaccination. We weren't expecting the government to move the vaccination program for the Australian team. So we ended up organising the vaccination of the Australian Olympic team and the Australian Paralympic team, and paid for it and covered it and did it so that it had no impact on the rest of the Australian community at all. So there's those additional things. This is a bit interesting one. If it wasn't for the tuna fishermen of South Australia, who the Japan Airlines aircraft kept flying to take the tuna to Japan, not the people, just the tuna, that kept enough aircraft flying to ensure that allowed us to use those aircraft to put Australian Olympians on the planes and fly them to Japan.
Wow, I never knew that.
You remember Qantas had stopped flying.
Yeah.
And so I went to Qantas and said, look, I know we have a sponsorship, but do you have a mind, Matt? Whatever you need to do.
Yeah. That's amazing. Because you were, just so I understand, because the tuna was flying over already, that airline was able to then, instead of take the tuna, they took the people.
Well, there was no one upstairs, so to speak. There's plenty of tuna in the hole, but no one. So we were able to get the team over and get the team back. And so we took over 1,000 people to Tokyo and back in the middle of a pandemic and had no COVID cases.
It's amazing.
And the other part of that was then related to it, going to our broader remit. Okay, how do we ensure Australians, because no one could go to the games, family and friends couldn't go to the games, sponsors couldn't go to the games. So how can we ensure, though, that the athletes in the high performance environment got the best support from Australians? We worked very closely with our broadcaster, was Channel 7 at the time. We worked very closely with governments around live sites. Now the live sites were set up and then things changed. The pandemic and live sites were taken down. Some states would allow live sites and some states wouldn't. And then those states would allow, because some states were allowing people to get together in smaller groups, but at this particular time in 2021, the opportunity that arose for the families to come together So we're working with Channel 7 to make sure that they can get the broadcast signal on big screens and things of that nature. So we just turned things I'd said. As I said, I didn't go to Tokyo because I said to the board, my senior management executives of the team, plus the chef, the missionary and chessman, you go to Tokyo and I'll stay here, because we had half the team back after the first week. And we're running him through quarantine and so forth. And Amy Wallace, Amy was working with me and others, not her role as head of people and culture, but organising the return flights to make sure we can get the people on the plane, whilst government officials sort of said, oh, they might be infected. I said, no, they're not. They've been quarantined. It's okay.
Yeah. It sounds like it would have been super challenging. It sounds like everyone was rolling up their sleeves to do what they could. So, like, what were you've painted a picture of what some of the core challenges were. What were some things other than finding out about the tuna that was going? Like, how did you overcome some of these challenges as a team? What were things that you needed to do as a team?
I worked in Japan for a couple of years, so I picked up a tiny bit of the Japanese. Anyway, the word for umbrella, in Japanese is wagasa. It means umbrella. And we sat back at before the game, said, okay, we need to ensure we put in a plan and strategies to ensure that the athletes not only had to qualify for the games and prepare for the games, and obviously get to the games and get back. And so we've created what we call Project Wagasa, an umbrella. How can we put this umbrella across the 30-odd sports through all their athletes, the officials, and manage both the team going into Japan to compete and then coming back into Australia? So we had the away team at the games, and then we had a team back in quarantine for 2 weeks, in case of the poor athletes who had to go to South Australia, plus another 2 weeks. But they were we had this home team, because at one stage we had more athletes at home towards back than we had away.
Right.
And then so we planned all that beforehand. How are we going to make this happen? What are all the components that we've got to do? And that was when we went looking for flights. All right, Qantas, I stopped flying. Who else was flying? We heard about the Japan Airlines, so we quickly changed. Engaging with the Australia community, we had to keep changing all the time, because they kept closing borders and opening borders and stopping people getting together and so forth. So to be very flexible. So yes, we had a great plan, and we, as I said, the project itself, just say put an umbrella right across it. So as things changed and groups came in and out, we could meet the needs of still providing a high performance environment, making sure they got back and forth safely in terms of health wise. And importantly, the people of Australia were still able to celebrate and support their Olympians.
Yeah. It sounds like you had a really good alignment between teams, like the teams that were working together within the AOC to make that happen. So teams that are high performing do need to be aligned and committed to the way forward as a team. And I think when you've got a really clear purpose like the AOC does, that probably helps with that alignment. But how did you create that alignment between the home and away team, especially whereas I imagine some of the home team might have normally been away, but in this occasion, because of Tokyo, had to be a part of the home team. So how did you create that connection and alignment?
Like any team, the most important thing is you got to have trust. And that's critical. Obviously, you got to have capable people, goes without saying. But then those capable people need to come together, as you say, as a team. But they must have trust, mutual trust. Otherwise, the team just won't hold together once the pressure starts. So there's that mutual trust and respect, so that each component is necessary. You can't say, what I'm doing is more important than you're doing. I'm on the away team, therefore we're the most important. No, the home team is equally as important as the away team. Because services are stuffed up and fallen over, no matter what happened in Japan would have disappeared in terms of measures of success. So that mutual respect, that mutual trust is critical to building a strong, dynamic team. And without it, you just don't succeed.
It's really interesting, because I find that teams often can galvanize in a crisis. And I'm not saying that the Tokyo Olympics was a crisis, but you've got a big event and the purpose becomes really clear and people galvanize. How do you create that trust and respect that you've talked about, or that team alignment, when it's not in the high pressure time?
We do determine what in building the team, what do we do? What's our role? So committed roles and responsibilities. So we know what we're with the charter. This is what we're going to do. How are we going? Who's going to do it? So we need to build an organisational structure around it. And then how are we going to do it? And that keeping that as clear and not complicated and not over the top, but just pretty straightforward. I guess the other importance of that is within myself as chief executive, but then for the senior executives with their teams, their people working with them, will lead by example. because that just builds that trust. If you got to say, you got to do what you say. You're going to do. And as I often am rather practical, because I come from the building industry many decades ago now, we got to get stuff done. Now, we just, it's not, don't get yourself too wrapped up in the shiny, bright stuff, because, okay, we're taking an Olympic team to, whether it be Paris or to Milan Cortina or to Tokyo, we're here to do a job. And our job is not to be in the bright lights. That's the athletes. Our job is to get the stuff done so that they are successful. And again, that builds that mutual trust and respect is critical to achieving that. And it's the same, that was with the teams, but then obviously on the home front or during the course of the years between is, okay, how can we assist in growing Olympic sport? How can we assist in ensuring sport is contributing to the community, and how we play a role with government? And we did other things as well. At the same time we were doing this, we were running a project for the Australian government to get the Olympic and Paralympic athletes from the Pacific Islands to the Tokyo Games. That was even more interesting.
And how so, if you can share anything? Like what made that so interesting?
Oh, because the islands had closed totally down. And so it's getting them, you still had to qualify. And that was the challenging piece for our Pacific Islands too. But again, it sort of fits both parts of our role. One was obviously to assist getting the Olympians and Paralympians to Tokyo from the islands, but also therefore that means that you're going to help grow that sport in those islands in terms of kids. Goes back to the Olympics Unleashed again, ensuring that the Fijian kids have got their Olympic champions, or they're just their Olympians who are representing Fiji in the games. We did it again for Paris as well. Not quite as stressful because with them it was open, but yeah.
Yeah, a little bit less stressful. I particularly like how you framed up, like how you build trust and respect is what we're going to achieve, those initiatives, who's going to do it, being really clear about the roles and responsibilities and how we're going to go about doing it. Because I think creating that clarity and that alignment is so important for a team to know where they're focused. I just want to go back to the context around purpose, because we talked about in any high-performing team, we know that you need to have a really clear team purpose, and that needs to be something that's different to the organisation's purpose. And I think it's pretty clear. You've got a charter around what the purpose of the AOC is, but how do you create that alignment with the exec team to that purpose? Is there anything specifically that you've done to connect your team to the purpose of AOC?
The purpose is our objectives, the purpose for what we exist to do these things. So that's the purpose. Why does the AOC exist? So there it is. And why? So that's the purpose. And you sit down as a group, so that the ownership of delivery on that purpose is as much the person who is head of teams or chief of teams as it is the chief financial officer. It's just because you have different roles and responsibilities, the senior executive team are responsible for delivering the purpose of the organisation and why we're here. Otherwise, why are you in the job if you don't want to go and do something else, if you find it all too much? So, but this is why we're here. And it's then, I've always said, we are here to make a difference. And therefore, our purpose is how we're going to make a difference to the Australian community, to the Olympic sport. So we're here to make a difference. And therefore, at the end of the day, that's what we'll be measured against. And if hopefully you're inspiring well enough, that's what they want to do. Otherwise, please find something else to do. That's the role of the AOC, is to make a difference in the Australian community across those range of things I talked about. So that purpose and making sure that everyone understands the reason for why we're there is critical to make sure you bring everyone on the long journey.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it flows through the organisation too in terms of what's most important.
And then so just the other piece of that is, because remember I said before, we borrow their athletes, but I'd say we can only deliver on our purpose if we also bring the sports with us as well. We have to respect the AOC and we have to respect the sports. When I first started, I think the AOC used to talk about our athletes and our team. I said, yes, our team, our athletes, no, sports athletes. Without the sports, we won't be able to achieve our purpose. We will not be able to do it. So working closer with the sports, earning their respect and ensuring that we understand fully what they need for their high performance piece. But then also in other aspects, what do you need commercially? How can we help you with your commercial program? A harder one, I must admit. How can we help you with advocacy to government to ensure that sport investment by governments continues? Because without strong sports, we cannot deliver on our purpose for being.
Well, that's it. And I think it's a really important one, articulating the organisation's purpose and being really clear about what is in your purpose and redefining where that you don't own the athletes or they sit with your members or your partners. You also would have quite a complex stakeholder group, I would imagine, across government, the sports community, sponsors, commercial partners as well. So you've spoken about how you've aligned people to the purpose, but is there anything else that you've needed to do with your key stakeholders to get alignment on what your key priorities are and establish those relationships?
Yes, there is. I mean, even a sponsor might come on board, and it's going to sound a bit odd, and they say, oh, yes, we want to sponsor the Olympics. And then you say, okay, that's fantastic, Olympic team, aspect of our community programs. What do you want to get out of it? And you have this, you've got to give why are you sponsoring the Olympic team? What do you expect? You've got to bring, see, you engage with in this case, the commercial to understand what they're trying to get out of it. And we can say, okay, well, we can now shape your partnership with us this way so that you will achieve your outcome, because we want them to be happy about it, because at the end of the day, they'll keep on investing in the Olympic team. And the other aspect is also, it's making sure people understand what we do, because it was never, we created a document which is basically tells people what we exist for, what our purpose is. And I'll leave the names out to protect the innocent, but the government minister we had a meeting with a while back now, and she said to me, Matt, never presume we know. Never presume we know. And then she turned to her advisors and said, never presume they know either. So that it really resonated with me that we often think people understand what we do or whatever any organisation does. Well, they don't. So I came, about also, we must make sure we explain to all our stakeholders how we fit in with them. Come to governments, so we fit in with the federal government differently to a state government. So Olympics Unleashed programs, this is what we do, this is how we do it, fits in with state education departments. In the case of investment in sport, well, that fits with the federal government through the Australian Sports Commission. I mean, they've got a far better idea of what we do, but and so it's the same. And if we were Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, the program we ran in the Pacific with them, they didn't really understand what the AOC did. Once we understand, oh, you can help us. And so that's making sure people, your stakeholders, understand what the AOC does and then how they can fit in. And in case of the sports, as I said, it's very important we engage. They're obviously our most important stakeholder because they're our members. I set up a series 3 a year, chief executive roundtables. It's not about us talking at them, it's them talking back to us as a conversation. And so, okay, what's on your mind? How do you think we went in Tokyo? What can we do better in Paris? How do you think we're going with government advocacy? Can we do that better? What do you people think? And that two-way dialogue in an organisation such as the AOC is critical.
Oh, it's so important. And I think it's something that a lot of organisations struggle with in terms of how do you truly partner? How do you actually ask for feedback and really listen to feedback? But how do you sit alongside each other to work through some of the challenges together rather than being an us and them or finger pointing? Yeah.
Oh, and sometimes you're right about it. Sometimes it's pleasant. It's okay. I said, look, if you don't talk to us, I don't know. I don't know what I don't know.
Well, that's it. But I do think that it's good to find out the stuff that's not going well or where we've failed or made mistakes, because otherwise we don't know. And if it's only ever good news, then there's probably something that they're not telling you or they don't feel safe to tell you. So I think if you are actually getting the real feedback, you build a relationship. I think it's how we respond to that feedback that's important.
Yeah. And that we tried a couple of things. Unfortunately, didn't quite come up. We might do a few more commercial things together. Because obviously one of the critical parts for all of the Olympic sports, greater majority of them, is their financial strength, which is they are struggling. They're under severe pressure. So the better ways we can support them in better income streams, revenue streams, a bigger part, the better. We got down a few paths there, but unfortunately the market changed. We didn't quite get where we wanted to get to, but doesn't mean you don't have another crack.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've got to persevere sometimes. Bring it, because we're looking at the outside in perspective of stakeholders. If we actually bring it to the AOC as a whole, what I'm finding with a lot of organisations I'm working with is that teams are operating in silos. There's a bit of a disconnect and a bit of us and them in terms of finger pointing and blame from an accountability perspective. Is there anything that you've done to replicate what you've done externally with your stakeholders to help your teams collaborate and connect and work together? And whether that's through some of the initiatives that you've had, but is there anything that comes to mind?
Unfortunately, we're not a big organisation. We're not a massive organisation. It's not hard for the chief executive to wander around the office and have a chat. But it's that interface is critical too. I mean, yes, you can have your management team, but obviously the next tier is down. And it comes back to ensuring you got that culture of everyone valuing the other person's job, no matter what it is. Just because one person is doing the accounts doesn't make them less valuable than the person who's going to an Olympic Games to help the Olympic team be successful. They're all critical to the cogs of the organisation. Occasionally silos do start to build. Look, be honest with you. It's the nature of people working together, and particularly where it is a little bit project driven. Because the Olympic team's a project. So the summer team's a project every 4 years. Similar project, but there are, because they're in different parts of the world, but sizes will change. Some of the dynamics change, but by and large, it's what the project's about. You can do it better, obviously, all the time. So, yes, and then making sure, therefore, that with the senior management team, I guess it comes back to that respect. People have to respect each other and trust each other. And the best way to do that, I found, is that the senior managers or senior executives have to lead by example. If they're not working together, then the people working underneath them will go, oh, why should I bother? And then you do start to get those silos. And that's what you don't need.
Yeah. So I'm hearing like it's anchored in sort of respect, trust, and role modeling at an exec level.
Yeah. Do you get it perfect every time? No.
Yeah.
But we're not perfect. That's why.
Well, that's the thing. And teams aren't static either. Like they're always evolving. Like it's something you're always working at as well. So is there anything else that would say is the secret sauce to your exec team success? Like you've talked about respect, you've talked about trust, you've talked about role modeling, and also having real clarity on what you're working on and what people's roles are. Do you think that it's that mix that is the secret sauce, or is there anything else that you think?
Yeah, as I said, you've got to get the right people in the right roles. So that comes down to your recruitment and ensuring you've got the right people there for. And the person coming into that role has to fully understand what the role is about, and therefore what the expectations that are set. Attitude is very, very important. I keep coming back to it, but if that you don't have trust, well, you're stuffed. And again, making sure everyone understands what we're here for, hence the objectives. This is what we do. The values and the culture, this is the way we do things. We do things around here. Then this is the way it is best. And yes, we're a membership organisation, so that's going to affect your values and culture. We also have these athletes every 4 years. We must respect them, and they respect the fact that they've set their entire life to achieve at the Olympic Games. And then the actual organisation know how we do things, get stuff done.
Yeah, I love it. I think the link to kind of purpose, trust, accountability is so key. In your opinion, what do you think is the most challenging part of building a thriving team? What's the hardest part?
People.
Yeah. Straight.
I'm not the most challenging, because I think, we can all sit around and work out what we're going to do. We can work out what we're going to get done. I say this about any organisation, but I've worked in the construction industry. Getting a building built is all about people. If you can't bring the people together, whether it's the architects, the engineers, the people at the top of the chain, or, as I say, the people who dig the ditches, you don't get a building built without the ditch diggers. And as much as important as the architect or the engineer is, tick, but I'm sorry, you're never going to get a building unless the ditch diggers. So you've got to be able to bring people together to get things done. And it's the same in a sporting organisation. It's all about people. It's other human beings competing in sport, in case of the Olympics, multiple sports. Then you've got to be, okay, well, how are we going to help those people understand those people and their sports, which is another bunch of people who are boards and directors and so forth, and people who pay for it, another bunch of people, the sponsors, the people who run the games, another bunch of people who are the IOC. You've got to make sure that we can manage those key relationships and manage the people. And therefore, within the organisation itself, you've got to manage your team. And there's only one team. Don't try to push to it. We don't have we have the away team, the home team, but at the end of the day, it's one team.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in having a one team mindset. I know Patrick Lencioni talks about who's your first team and your primary team, but I feel like it's choosing between your favourite child, and we all know it depends on the day, but really it's about like, how do you actually lift the gaze and make decisions for the greater good of the whole and have that one team mindset? And what I'm hearing, Matt, in terms of your leadership ethos is about people feeling valued and also having clarity about what they need to do. Like, I feel like that's what I'm hearing from what you said.
And the leadership team, you set the values and the culture, but the leadership team must lead by example.
Yeah, and that role playing.
There is no point, if you're not doing that, no one's going to, well, you don't do it. Well, why should I? If you're not living that's when things start to break ground, because trust starts to break down.
Yeah, which comes back to the people element. And I think trust and psychological safety is so critical for a high performing team.
Exactly. Yeah. Particularly under the pressure of, say, the Olympic team competition. The athletes are off in the morning for training. Competition runs all day and often late into the night. So the actual people at the AOC, staff and contractors looking after the team could end up working very long hours. So we've been very understanding of making, you, the leaders, have to structure it so your people get a break. Don't think they're going to turn up every day for 20 hours a day. That's not the way you do things for exactly the reasons that you go. That's again, that comes back to management of people. And you've got to think about how are you going to manage your people in the stressful area. Okay, it's stressful. Well, it's going to be busy, but if you think about it, you can find a way. And if you need more people, all right, put your hand up. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, and being pragmatic about it. You've just recently left probably the most prestigious role in sport. Having the Olympics is obviously pretty high on the pedestal. I don't think you get much higher than that. So what are you most proud of in terms of the legacy that you're leaving at the Australian Olympics Committee?
I've left it fully engaged with this complete mandate. It's not just about getting the Olympic team to games. It is that engagement with the community. It is our Indigenous programs where we're engaging with and creating more Indigenous coaches and more Indigenous Olympians. So those sort of things, we've made sure we're engaged with our mandate. The school programs we've spoken about, the programs looking after the Olympians. So in other words, the full mandate, what we were there to do, and our respect for our sports. They are our members. Their success is our success. And so I think then that's the culture we've changed in the organisation. And so I'm very, very, very proud of that. And I guess people say, oh, why don't you stay for Brisbane 32? And I said, well, it was quite easy. I said to the board some time ago, I'll be 72. I don't think I need to be CEO at the age of 72, not knocking people who wish to do that. And I said to them, but the CEO for Brisbane has to go to LA, Los Angeles Games 2028, because otherwise we'll have no chance of understanding the mystery of the five rings and understand the relationship. The other relationships is relationship with other national Olympic committees, which is very important. We have a great relationship with our counterparts in Canada and UK and the US and New Zealand and the other Pacific Islands as well. So it's that I said, they need to do that. So yeah, I'll leave it with you. So that's what I said, I'm happy to depart. And that's how we did it. Because I think you want to be able to hand something on. Been too many years in sport, looking at people on sporting boards and sporting committees, think, why are you still hanging there? Didn't want to be a hypocrite.
Yeah, they held on a bit too long.
It's got to look out. Eventually you want to give it over to someone and bring their fresh ideas to the organisation, and you want to leave it. I think so. I guess we're now fully engaged with our full mandate, and that's what I'm very, very proud of. And that included our partners who put the funding in to make it work.
Yeah, what an awesome legacy that you're leaving. So my final question is, if you could leave our listeners with one message about thriving teams, what would it be?
Thriving teams is, well, there's trust within the team, trust that your fellow manager's got your back. At the end of the day, you got to get stuff done. So sorry, there's a job to get done. And as I said, you got to set the example for the rest of the organisation. You got to lead by example.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. And I love how it mirrors what's in the Thriving Teams model as well, because I think there's a really nice link there too. Thank you so much, Matt, for your time. I did not know about the tutor getting athletes to Japan, so I've definitely had some insight there. But thank you for sharing the AOC's
Pleasure.
story.
No, absolute pleasure.
What a masterclass in purposeful leadership. Matt Carroll reminded us that thriving teams aren't built by chance. They're shaped intentionally through clarity, trust, and a deep respect for every role, whether you're in the spotlight or behind the scenes. I loved his insight on the home and away team during the Tokyo Games. It was a powerful reminder that contribution isn't measured by visibility, but by alignment to purpose. Matt's leadership showed us that when teams feel valued and connected, when they understand the what, the who, and the how, they can navigate extraordinary complexity with unity. and that alignment extends beyond the internal team to stakeholders, members, sports, and partners, all moving together under a shared mission. If this episode sparked ideas about how you can align your team around purpose or how you can create a culture where everyone feels like they're part of one team, we'd love to hear your reflections. Thanks for joining the Thriving Leaders podcast. Keep on thriving. Thanks for joining us at the Thriving Leaders podcast. If you'd like to find out more about our leadership programs, including our Thriving Leaders program, Thriving Women in Leadership and Thriving Teams, as well as executive and team coaching, keynote speaking or facilitation, head to our website, www.thrivingculture.com.au. This is also where you can sign up for our newsletter, where I share useful leadership and team development insights and tools, as well as our podcast. You can also grab your copy of my book, Thriving Leaders, Learn the Skills to Lead Confidently. It's also available at all good online retailers, on Audible, Spotify, and Kindle. If you like this episode, I'd be so grateful if you left a 5-star review, as it helps us reach more people and therefore helps more leaders thrive.